Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, a website designer and business coach for entrepreneurs and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want a deep dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a successful business and stand out in a crowd, you're in the right place. After creating a multiple six-figure-a-year website design business in my 20s, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, branding, website design, mindset, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. All right, guys, I have been so excited to air this interview. So I had the absolute honor of interviewing my amazing client and friend, Rick Mulready. So Rick and I worked together last year for his rebrand and his new website, and it was a blast. And I say this on his interview, but he was so fun to work with, and it's one of my favorite projects to date. I really love the end result and the whole experience we had working together. So I have also learned so much from Rick during the process of working with him, which made me really excited to have him on my podcast. And throughout our project, we'd randomly talk business. And if you listen back, a while back on the podcast, a few episodes I did about my Booked Out Designer beta launch, then you know that Rick played a huge role in me even doing a beta launch. I was planning to create the whole course and then launch it. And then we had a conversation about that. And what he said is what pushed me to do the beta launch. So I can't think of enough for the conversation we had that day. And his podcast was actually one of the first I discovered when I started my business years ago. When I was still working a 9-to-5, I would listen to his podcast while working on my drive to and from work. So this interview is really special for me. And in this interview, I asked Rick all the things about what his business and life look like behind the scenes as a 7-figure-a-year business owner. So no matter where you are in your business right now, I know you're going to learn so much from Rick's insight into the mindset, habits, thoughts, and actions that have led to his success and that can lead to your success too. He's been doing this business thing for a long time and has a lot of wisdom about building and scaling a business and also making a business that doesn't drain you and cause you to have to work 24/7 and that sort of thing. So some things we talk about. We talk first about how Rick makes money in his business and how that's evolved over the years. So his different offers, how he went from really focusing on Facebook ads to lots of other things now. We talk about what a typical workday looks like for him, his team building strategies, which I think you guys are really going to enjoy. Again, I think that's something too huge that I've learned from working with him is a lot around team building. So we talk about that. We also talk about how parenthood changed Rick's business and work schedule. We talk about all kinds of calendar and scheduling strategies for success, like what does Rick's work week look like? How does he plan his day to work around his energy and all of that kind of stuff? We talk about how Rick is working towards a 4-day work week, why your mindset matters so much, how to better track your business data. I mean, guys, we talk about so many things in this episode, so that's just a little glimpse into it. And if you don't yet know Rick, he's a business coach, he's an online ads expert, and he's the host of one of the top marketing podcasts, The Art of Online Business. He's from Southern California, he's a husband, he's a dad, and he's seriously super knowledgeable about running an online business. And fun fact, I've actually been on Rick's podcast twice, and I'm going to link directly to both of those episodes in the show notes, but I'd highly recommend checking those out. Check out his whole podcast, but definitely listen to our interviews too after this. So those on his show was episode 438 and 482. And in one, we did a deep dive into my business and into my template shop. We talk about how my business makes multiple 5 figures a month on Evergreen with the templates and a bunch of other stuff like that. Really a deep dive in to the back end of my business. And then the other episode, we talk about his new website and the strategy behind it, what working together was like, that whole collaborative process. So both of those are really fun interviews, and he asked me a lot of great questions on them. So without further ado, I'm going to play this awesome conversation with Rick. And again, I hope you get so much out of it. I hope you take notes, and I hope you implement all the awesome stuff he's sharing. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Rick. And I've got to say before we get started, because I want you to know this and I want everyone else to know this, but you're seriously one of my favorite people I've gotten to work with as a designer. Like, I feel like we're not supposed to have favorite clients, but I feel like it's like having favorite children sort of thing. But that's kind of how I feel, is that you've just been such an amazing client to work with. And I think some of it is that I've gotten to learn so much from you, from seeing how you run your business by being someone who is getting to work with you and your team. And so I'm excited to get to ask you all the questions and for everyone else to get an inside peek in your business. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm super honored to be here. I was telling you about that and how excited I am to come on and chat with you. So and thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it, because I've worked with. But you have to take some credit too here, a lot of credit, because you make it easy to work with. Like, and what I also found very, very quickly, like literally within the first couple of conversations, was like, oh, you get me. You get what I'm looking for. You get where I'm trying to take this. And there was no judgment in how crappy things were from the website perspective and branding and all that stuff. So yeah, it was just very easy all around, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it was just, super, super fun project. Okay, so to start though, for people who might not know you, will you share who you are and what you do and who you serve in your business?
Yeah. So I am, first and foremost, I'm a dad and a husband. And I'm also a business coach. And I've been running this business here for 7.5 years. So we started in January 2014. Was when I took things seriously, started doing webinars and stuff like that. And I started teaching Facebook ads. And for many years, I was, quote, known as the Facebook ads guy. I'm using air quotes right now. And the reason I started out there was because I come from a corporate online advertising background, where I did everything from doing like back end stuff, like literally putting ads up on, I started out at AOL years ago. And so I was in the operations side. I've done client management, account management. Then I get into sales, where I was selling online advertising. And I loved the online side of a business, even though I was working with like some of the biggest brands in the world. And so when I decided that I wanted to do like my own business, I wanted to, quote, become an online entrepreneur. And again, I'm using air quotes because I had no idea back in 2012 what that actually meant. So I left the corporate world in the fall of 2012. And then for a year and a half, I fumbled around trying to figure out what the heck I was doing. But yeah, so I dove into Facebook ads because of my background, and the online advertising side came very easy to me, but I didn't know Facebook ads. And so in 2010, I started teaching myself because I was seeing what was going on Facebook at the time. And so that just sort of evolved. And I actually, unlike most people, I actually love Facebook ads and trying to figure it out and making work for other people, meaning coaching them and teaching them, because it comes very easy to me just because of the background. Yeah. And then a couple of years ago, I started to branch out and teach even a more holistic approach to the building of an online business for course creators and coaches. And the reason for that is because people were coming to me thinking they had ads problems, or my ads aren't working, or I'm not building my list because my ads aren't working, et cetera. But what I was coming up over and over and over is because, well, you don't understand, not you, Elizabeth, or anybody listening, like just sort of overarching, people didn't understand the foundational marketing principles, meaning like they didn't even understand their target audience. They didn't understand the problem that they solved and then how they solved it for people. And so it's like, well, you got to start there first in order for your ads to work. And so then I got into more teaching about mindset, because I'm like fascinated by how mindset is connected to growing and the success of an online business. And so I started talking a lot more about mindset and systems and processes, and I will geek out about funnels and all that stuff all day long. And so a few years ago, I started to branch out and made it become sort of more official, if you will, where I started introducing new episodes on the podcast where I was talking about more things than just Facebook or Instagram ads, or more things about YouTube ads, or whatever it was. And it was really well received. And so I was excited because that was the direction that I wanted to go. And so that's what I do now, is I help online course creators and online coaches really grow and scale and optimize their business. Many of them are, at two different stages. Mostly I'm working with the upper end entrepreneurs where they're already doing, say like they're just getting up to that 6-figure mark and they really want to explode. They really want to go to that, multiple 6 or even 7 figures, but they're not really sure what to do. They're not really sure. They're overwhelmed. They're doing all the stuff and they're feeling burnt out or maybe heading towards burnout. And so that's where my team and I come in, and the community of entrepreneurs that we've created inside our accelerator coaching program, where we help people blast through all that stuff. And ads are a big piece of that. And we still get a lot of people that come in just for ads, or they think that the ads are what they need. And that is usually true, but there's 9 times out of 10, there's way more than that too. And on the flip side, as you know, is we also help on the earlier side, people looking to generate their first 5K months. They have an offer, maybe they've launched a couple times, but just not seen the results. So we help you optimize your business to get to that point. And so that, and I'm a podcaster, the Art of Online Business podcast.
Yeah. Longtime podcaster.
Yeah. I'm literally today, as we're recording this, I'm literally recording episode number 500.
Yes.
Which is
crazy. It's
actually a week from the time recording this, a week from today. And I'm a little bit behind in recording that episode. But yeah, I was like going through the numbers this morning. I started in January 2015 with the podcast. And I think next month we're going to hit 7 million downloads from the show.
Amazing. Yeah. I can't remember if I've told you this before, but when I was working a corporate job, which was only like 4 months because I quit pretty quickly and started my business, but I listened to your podcast during that time. And I didn't even really know anything about podcasting or online business. I was mostly listening to Serial, which was also big at that time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then it was that and yours and like a few other business ones, but yeah, congrats on being so close to that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. With your business. So thinking about how you did get started being, like you said, like the Facebook ads guy, quote unquote. Do you feel like your business took off when you were still just like that was your emphasis, or did it really take off when you switched to being like more holistic in what you were talking about?
I think such a great question. And I think I'm going to answer that in 2 different ways. It began to take off financially with the ads, when I was just focusing on ads. I think that's a common journey that a lot of people take, is like they start off with specializing like with one thing. Like I just interviewed somebody yesterday for my show and she specializes in Instagram, but she also teaches other things. But she started out with Instagram, and it was sort of like the natural evolution because there's so much more to it. And so I feel like that was the same thing for me. And frankly, I got kind of bored about always talking about ads, right? Like I can teach ads to anybody. Like I can teach somebody ads. And so when it became like, this is all I'm doing, but yet talking about building a team and mindset and systems and other marketing stuff, like that stuff really lights me up in addition to the ads, right? That's when it kind of became, things started to take off even more so with my happiness in what I was doing. And then as a result of that, revenue increased as well. That makes sense.
Yeah, that does, because then you're more passionate about what you're doing when you're getting to talk about the other stuff as well. Yeah, I love that. Okay, and then I want people to have clarity on, as we're talking about running a 7-figure business, like what your offerings are. So I know you have 2 main offerings. You want to talk about those real quick, and then any others I might be forgetting even?
No, it's the 2 main offers, but I'm starting to do something else that actually I never even talked about publicly. But the main offer that I have is my accelerator coaching program. This is a program that I started years ago. I'm thinking like 4 years ago. And it's gone through so many different iterations, meaning like started off as a 3-month thing, and then it was a 6-month, and then it was a 12-month, and it went back to 6, and like just the evolution of the program. And what it is now is this is amazing community of online course creators and coaches who again, they're already doing well in their business, but they're stuck. They need some help in moving forward. And we call it, we want to optimize their business. And so this is a combination. It's a 12-month program. a combination of one-on-one coaching with me, group coaching, and also the mastermind experience. And so we've created this thing. The reason I created it in that format is because this is something that I always wanted, in my business. And even to now, like if I were to do something, there would have to be all these different elements. And if like for myself, right, to go into, that is my main program, Accelerate. Again, it's a 12-month program. And there's a ton of stuff in the program that help people get results. It's not another course. So like, for example, people don't come in and say like, okay, I'm going to start with module 1 here. No, it's not like that. Yeah. On the flip side, what is more like that is offer to optimized. We call it OTO. And that is, again, as I mentioned before, people more so on the beginning side of growing their online business. Again, course creator or an online coach. And the difference with OTO is that number one, it's a 12-month program. Number two is there's a huge coaching component to it. And so many things out there are just the course. And that's what I did for years. But I listened to people, right? And also wanted to create something that was very different than what was out there. And so what we've created in that is that, they get the course, they get the step-by-step, but they also get access to a Facebook ads coach for my team. They get access to weekly, even twice a week, calls with our Offer to Optimize coaches. They have a Facebook group where they can ask questions, whenever they want and get answers. And then also I do a monthly call with them. And so that's different than most other programs out there, especially for the price point of where it's at. So those are the two offers. What I'm starting to get into now is to do very select partnerships with people where, there's no money exchange except for where there's profit being generated. And so that's brand new. That's something that really lights me up because it's more of like a partnership in what they're doing in the business and so forth. So and that's really evolved. That's it for me. The way I look at that is like simplified, because I've gone through having, 5 courses and a membership and a high end. And I was just like, because I thought that was the answer. I thought that was like, hey, more revenue or more offers, more revenue. And sometimes that's true, but also it complicates things.
I love that advice of like, you don't have to have a million things you're selling to hit those bigger numbers. Okay. I have a question for you about energy levels, because you do, I know this from like working with you on your website even, and getting to like almost see your schedule a little bit when we were having to schedule meetings, but you spend a lot of time coaching people like between those 2 programs. And you also have a podcast with 2 episodes a week where you end up doing a ton of interviews. Yep. How do you do all of that outward teaching and coaching and listening and interviewing and still like stay sane? I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but like, how does that work for you?
Sane is a good word. And this is such a great question. And thank you for asking that. Like, I'm an introvert. Like, I have to really get up for if I'm doing a presentation or teaching or doing a podcast episode or what have you. And so by the end of a day, I'm drained, right? And I also have a 2-year-old daughter. She's 2.5. And so that's really when she was born. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about this, but like when she was born, things really changed in my schedule where everyone talks about, productivity and efficiency and stuff like that, but no one really, and managing their time, but very few people talk about managing your energy. And so I learned this concept from a guy by the name of Craig Ballantyne years ago. He called it magic time. And it's basically like identifying when in the day is your brain clearest and firing on highest cylinders, right? And so for some people, I would say for most people, it's early morning. Other people, it's maybe like late morning. Other people, it's like late at night. I am not a night person. Like, forget about it. I am not a night person. But I know plenty of people who are, and they get like their best work done at that point. And so I am a very early morning person. And that does change since my daughter's 2.5. But the morning time is my quote magic time. That's when I'm very, very protective of that time, that's when I schedule I call like my RPAs, my revenue producing activities. So whether it's podcasts, whether it is maybe a coaching call, if I'm creating content, that sort of thing, where I backload, if you will, towards the latter part of the day, all the other stuff like administrative stuff or what have you, that doesn't take as much of my brain power. And so many people, number one, haven't identified that time. So for anybody listening, if you haven't identified what that magic time is for you in the day, definitely recommend it. And all you really have to do that is just like become aware of like, oh, when am I most energetic? When is my brain most turned on? When do I feel like this becomes kind of effortless? You got to quote unquote get into flow, into the zone. Okay, cool. That's probably a good place to start. And then protect it at all costs. Even if it's like an hour or 2 hours, like that goes on your calendar and nothing goes in there. And again, it's going to be different for everyone. Do you know what your magic time is?
I think for me, it's the morning as well, but like not immediately in the morning, more like 9 a.m., 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Like more mid-morning for me. But yeah, I mean, I think that makes so much sense. And I am curious for you too, with all the meetings and stuff, and I'm guessing you do, but like, do you do days of the week where you're like, This is a meeting day, this is a no meetings at all day?
Yeah. And so this has been a work in progress for since I started, and I'm always trying to look for ways to improve it. So yes, I do. So I kind of follow a hybrid of like Michael Hyatt's front stage, backstage sort of. So it's kind of like that is the foundation, but then I put my own stuff into it. So Mondays for me, it's a calls day, like team calls, coaching calls. Maybe I might have a call with my coach, et cetera. Like that's a Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday are content days. Now, the way I look at content days, like I'm doing this interview with you on a Wednesday. I will do podcasts, my own shows, whether it's an interview for my show or a solo episode. I might take time to write or outline an episode. I have started taking, I might do a coaching call on one of those days, on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And I do look at that as, I'm serving outwardly in that by doing that. And then Thursday is another coaching day, calls, that sort of thing. And then Friday is my sort of catch-all of the week, where in the morning, I block off, I call it my CEO time. So that is like thinking big picture, high level stuff that hopefully I'm not doing a whole lot. Or if I am, it's for sure working on the business, meaning, team or vision or what have you. And then I cut off on Fridays around 2. However, I'm working towards cutting Friday out completely and just doing 4 days. And then within those days, by the way, going back to like, when is my energy the highest? Within the days, I block, all right, I got to do this type of activity. So for example, if I have to write and outline an episode or what have you, I try and do all of that same type of task together. So I'll try to batch like writing. And that for me would be in the morning because I want to be freshest for that. Then in the afternoon, I could be like, recording it, what have you. So it's kind of how I set up my time.
I love that. Okay. And I have 2 questions with that. One, what do you have a schedule you're sticking to where you're like, I start work at 9, I end at 4 or 5 or whatever, or is it varying a lot every day? Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed, so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravey.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. Now back to the episode.
It varies from day to day, but only from the perspective of it's that type of day. So like Monday, for example, I will go. So I don't start any calls or anything until 10 a.m. I'm on the West Coast, so Pacific time. And a lot of that's because of, in the morning time with Maya, who's my daughter, it's really hard for me to predict, right? Like she might have a meltdown or we might just be in the middle of having an amazing time or what have you. And so I do my startup routine. Again, this is a Michael Hyatt-esque, but I kind of do a little bit differently too. But I start up the day at about 9:30 where I answer, I'll check really quick email, get back to any kind of Voxers with the team, check Slack, et cetera. And then I move into whatever my first thing is at 10 a.m. On Monday, I'll go till 4, usually about 4:30, because my last call ends at 4, and then I do my end of day ritual. Tuesday and Thursday are different because in the morning, I give my wife a break, Amy. So she can work out and take her time easing into the day. And this all really started with the pandemic because we haven't had childcare like most people in like a year and a half. So I'll start at same kind of thing, but I generally will start closer right till 10 o'clock instead of 9:30. And then I finish at 3:45 because then I take over for Maya and I give my wife a break, a couple hours there. So that's Tuesday and Thursday. And then Wednesday, Amy has her own online coaching business. And so she has clients in the afternoon. So depending on what week it is, I will either stop at 2:45 or 3:45, depending on when she's starting. And again, Wednesday is another start at 9:30 with a startup ritual, 10 o'clock, I'm rolling. And then Friday is pretty much an open day.
Yeah, I love that. And I love hearing too, you're saying it all through it, but like it changes with seasons too, of like with your daughter, like and with the pandemic, even like having to change stuff up. I love that. And okay, one thought too, I've heard you talk about this before, but I know like it's so common for entrepreneurs because we're like, let's quit corporate. Like we want freedom to feel like not having a schedule and do whatever you want with your time is like the solution. That's like winning in your business. And I know you don't really see it that way. So I'd love for you to like talk about that.
I'm laughing right now because I had this experience literally last week.
Okay.
So I had to get over that, like exactly what you just said. Like I had to get over that feeling of, wait, I don't want to put stuff on my calendar because now I'm like tied to these things and I have set times I need to do things or I have a call or whatever it is. Like that's not freedom.
Yeah.
And then what I needed to understand was that the more structure I had on my schedule, that actually equaled more freedom. Meaning, all right, I'm starting at this time. I'm stopping at this time. I'm scheduling in this workout, this playtime with my daughter, this walk, this whatever it is, it's scheduled. And so when you're finishing, when you're starting. And if you want to, like last week on Friday, we took my daughter we're here in San Diego. So we always take her to San Diego Zoo has 2 different areas, the safari park and like the downtown zoo. So we took her to the downtown zoo last week because we normally take her to the safari park. I took Friday off, took Friday morning off. And, just being able to schedule that in through structure allowed me to do that no problem. But last Wednesday, a week ago today, I had nothing on my calendar because I did a poor job in planning my week. Wednesday was awful for me, meaning like I felt like I didn't get anything done. I felt like I was all over the place. I finished that day with like, well, that was a waste. And then I'm someone who likes to beat myself up over stuff, and definitely been a work in progress on that. But what I realized because of my awareness around it was because of my schedule, I didn't have stuff scheduled.
Yeah.
And when I'm saying schedule, I mean like record episode at number 500. But what most people do is they'll put in their calendar that record episode or
work on podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's where I was going. Yeah, work on episode 500 or whatever. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and when we say that, there's no like definition of, okay, I completed this in this time frame. And so what I've had to learn, and it doesn't come easy to me because I hate stopping and thinking about it, but it becomes much easier. It's like, all right, instead of work on episode 500, it's, complete X of episode 500. So for example, it would be complete the outline, and you block off whatever time that is that's going to take. You estimate, right? And then you get better as you go. Then it's about record like whatever, intro, outro, or whatever it is. Then record the full episode. When you break it down like that, and that's what gets scheduled on your calendar rather than work on something, it completely changes everything.
Yeah. And it gives you more freedom outside of work to do more when we're scheduling. Yeah. Okay. With your calendar, are you like a Google Calendar, iCalendar? Or paper?
Yeah. I'm not a paper person anymore. I write a lot on my iPad, which I love just because it's like very satisfying for me.
Yeah.
But from a calendar perspective, I'm definitely Google Calendar, always use Google Calendar. And we have a couple different calendars on there. So like, for example, I have like a Watch Maya calendar. So like when I'm taking over to watch my daughter, that's one of the calendars. So I can check that box or uncheck it so it shows up. I also have my ideal calendar that we've created. So like, okay, this is what I call production time. So like for this 2-hour block, I'm putting in production time in there, for example, or this is meetings time, or this is coaching time. And so that when we're scheduling, it's going in one of these blocks that are based on the energy levels and stuff we've been talking about. So I can, and then obviously we have the schedule of like what's actually being scheduled. So I can turn off, like I can uncheck the boxes in Google Calendar to look at, okay, this is my ideal. This is what we've scheduled. And then I can turn off the ideal to just look at what's on my calendar to get to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I love that idea of doing like the ideal one to make sure you're like trying at least to put stuff in the blocks. Yeah. That's so smart. I need to do that. Cause I'm also like I do iCalendar, but I have different like color coding and things like that I really appreciate for all the different categories. But yeah, I love that. Okay. Another question for you. I want to talk about mindset because I know that's something, it's one of your like 3 things you talk about a lot in your business, first of all. And I think this is on your website, either that or you've like said it on your podcast or something, but that mindset is 80% of the success of your online business.
Yep.
I totally agree with that like it's such a huge thing. So I'm curious though, like how does that play out for you when you think about building your business to 7 figures?
Yeah. So I don't think it's on the website. It should be.
Okay. We should. I think it might be on one of the sales pages, maybe. That might be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's it.
But
most people think like, and that's really what I was talking about before, where people would come to me, for example, and say, hey, my ads aren't working, or this or that. And when you really dig into it, yeah, the ads may have not been working, but how they were thinking about it was the first thing that was not setting them up for success. So here's an example, like very concrete example. I have a student in the accelerator who has started ads, and after like 3 days of running the ads, they're like super frustrated because the ads aren't working, right? And so if you go into it with the mindset that, you know what, I need to play the long game, meaning this is not an overnight success. This is not like, 3 days and I'm going to have a flood of leads coming in at, 25 cents. I'm going to be selling all this stuff as a result. It takes time to do that. And so go into that sort of situation, for example, with the right mindset, with the right thought of patience, and I'm going into it, to be testing this. It just changes everything, as opposed to, no, this has to work now. And if it doesn't, I am broken. Something's broken. So there's an example of mindset. So as a 7-figure entrepreneur or working towards a 7-figure entrepreneur, you have to start out with that foundation of how you look at your business through the lens of your mindset. And talking about the things like scheduling your time, like our number one value is integrity, right? So integrity means a lot of different things, but one example is whatever you say you're going to do, you do. And so integrity might be, and I'm certainly not 100% on this, but integrity might be if you schedule an hour to do something, you stop at that hour, right? Because you said you're going to do that. And so you're going to do it. And so again, this is a mindset. This is a mindset thing. The other thing too is if you go into something where I see this a lot, it's the short-term thinking and people aren't thinking long-term. We have to understand that what we're doing, like we just hear from people on podcasts, for example, like people might be listening right now and they're like, oh, it's easy for you, Rick, because you're doing as well as you're doing in the business right now. Well, what a lot of people don't see is like, I've been at this a long time. I started Facebook ads 11 years ago and I had no idea what I was doing for the first few years. But I've also been doing it now for 7 years now. And, I have another accelerator student literally right now. She's in the middle of a launch and her first couple webinars did not go as well as she was hoping for. Her show up rate wasn't great. The number of sales wasn't great. So she's having a total breakdown over it. And I'm able to empathize with her and be like, I've been there so many times that like, this is completely normal, but it would be very easy to fall into the mindset of I'm a failure. I don't know what I'm doing. People don't like what I want. Like people don't want what I have. People don't like what I'm putting out there. My copy isn't like you can tell any one of those stories and we get to choose whether we listen to it or not. And so that's really the big thing of getting our mindset right in how we look at things. Another place this shows up is the data. Like I talk about this a lot. The numbers don't lie. A lot of people, number one, don't track their numbers in their business. And when you start tracking the data in your business, whether it's revenue, whether it's profit, whether it's funnel numbers or ad stats or whatever, people start, and I did this for a long time too, we start looking at those numbers and making judgments about what those numbers mean about us. And like, oh, my lead cost or whatever is terrible. I don't know what I'm doing. Or, you know what, I lost money this month. I didn't make any profit. I spent more than I made. Uh-oh, things are crashing and burning, right? It's just numbers. Numbers are neutral. And when we can realize that the only meaning that the numbers have are the meaning that we're giving to those numbers is the meaning that we're giving to those numbers, then things we get to take a step back and become what I call the optimized CEO. Is so when you're doing that, you're taking a step back, you're looking at the data and saying, you know what? Okay, this isn't working. What exactly isn't working? And what can I do about it? What can I test to try to optimize that to improve it, to make it better? But when we make decisions from a place of I'm a failure, I'm fearful this is never going to work again, we don't make the right kind of decisions. So we can step back and take more of a neutral approach. Again, all mindset, we're going to come up with far different answers and approach things from a better place.
Yeah. I needed that reminder too of like not making it all mean something it doesn't, but still paying attention and yeah, looking at the numbers and all of that. I'm curious, what do you think are the like most important metrics to watch when it comes to numbers?
Well, I mean, from a business perspective, revenue, your gross and net profit margin, your cash, like, what's your cash forecasting? How much do you have in the bank? How much do you have coming in?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Then as far as your business goes, it really is going to be different for everyone. I mean, of course, it's revenue, right? Like I mentioned,
Yeah.
like how much in sales revenue is coming in. But then I like to tell people, think about like a nurse or a doctor, and they're taking your vital signs. So they're taking these whatever number of checks, like your blood pressure and your oxygen levels, well, all that stuff. Like these are vital signs to the health of your body. It's the same kind of thing with your business. Like, what are the vital signs to your business that means that it is growing, right? So that could mean number of new leads this week. That could mean number of sales calls booked. That could mean number of sales calls that turned into sales. So it's going to be different for everyone, but that's how I'd really recommend looking at it is, okay, what are the vital signs to my business that really tell the story about the health of the business? And, we can get into the whole, we can go down a rabbit hole, but what I won't, but like, there's like things called like lagging indicators and leading indicators. And so if you're only looking at things like that happened in the past, like, oh, I did this much revenue last month, and we're not looking at metrics and stats that are telling the picture about the future, we can't do anything about last month. We can only do things about, so we want to be looking at, the lagging indicators, but also the leading indicators about what's happening right now that we can affect, that we can optimize, we can change. So it's going to vary. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. And then it's one thing too I thought about as you were saying all that, with the whole like feelings we can have of like, woe is me, this is all my fault, this means something about me. Do you ever still run into that yourself? Like of feelings of like comparison even and stuff like that? Like, how do you deal with that?
Oh my God. You guys can't see this, but as Elizabeth was saying that, I'm like, yes. I'm like nodding my head. Yeah, it comes up all the time. Like I'm human, right?
Yeah.
It's the difference is I can handle it and I know how to handle it way better now because I've been doing this a long time, as opposed to when it was happening in like year one, year two. Like when I first started, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to teach Facebook ads. All that stuff about who am I to be teaching this, for example, came up. Like there was Amy Porterfield and Mari Smith and all these other people who were very well known that were teaching this stuff. And here I was, I started out, I had no email list. I started this podcast a year after the first year of the business. And so I didn't have a consistent content. I had no foundation from which I was just like starting from nothing. And so it was getting over that and realizing, again, mindset, who am I not to be teaching this stuff? Who am I not to be teaching and helping somebody that needs this help? Yeah. And so again, another mindset thing. But like the comparison syndrome and like imposter, I don't really fall into the imposter syndrome thing anymore, but it did for many, many years. But the comparison thing like comes up all the time. But again, I'm able to catch it and put it in perspective much easier than I used to be able to. I think one of the biggest things, again, mindset, is when you realize that it's not going to end, right? It is always going to come up in some level, but you're just going to deal with it, if you will, in a different way. And hopefully it's getting easier as time goes on. The other thing too that has been part of the evolution of, this is going to sound terrible, but I really don't want to know what other people are doing, just because I don't want to let that affect what I'm doing, because we all suffer from shiny object. I'm no different. Like, ooh, that over there sounds fun. I should be doing that. Yeah. And we take our eyes off of what we're doing, like I always tell my students, like, put your blinders on. Like, it's like you're running on the track, right? Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what other people are doing around you. Stay in your lane and do your thing. That's when you're because when we don't, we get distracted, right? We look at what other people are doing. We start listening to 14 different people. And then it's like, holy cow, what do I do? And then what happens? We get paralyzed and we do nothing. And so I'm not saying don't pay attention to other people or listen or whatever, but try as hard as possible to stay in your lane and do your thing. And that's really what I've done. Again, later, like just more recently, I would say in the past 2 years, it's like, yeah, I'll like unsubscribe to everybody's newsletter. Like, you know what I mean? Just because, they're great. I don't care necessarily to see what they're doing at this point. And the earlier that you can sort of embrace that and just run your race. And I'll just mention this, and because I think this is super, super important. Again, mindset. We're all talking about mindset.
Yeah.
Is what I see is, and I did this too. When I first started the business, it was, I want to hit 7 figures. I want to hit $1 million in revenue. Why? Because everyone's talking about you've made it when you hit 7 figures. Then you can talk about like, yeah, I'm a 7-figure business owner. And so now I know what I'm doing now. Like, you're not like, like you don't know what you're doing at 500,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is, right? Or 50,000 even. And so I ran that race. I hit 7 figures in 4 years. Super proud of that. But it also came at the expense of my health, like literally my physical health, my mental health, my relationships. Like things were really rocky with my wife. So much suffered. Like again, that could be a whole other topic, but like I got as low as I've ever been in my life. And I started questioning, like, what am I doing here? Like literally on the earth. Like that's how deep things got and how dark things got for me during that time, because I was on this quest of like, I gotta do it. And it sounds really weird, but then I hit it and I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is amazing. But now what? Mm-hmm. Right. And so why was I telling this story? Oh, and so what I see with so many of my students is that they're chasing somebody else's definition of success. Like they hear on a podcast or they watch YouTube videos or they read whatever it is, or read emails, like 7-figure, that's the big number that people still, and that's amazing. Like if someone wants to hit, I'm not saying don't shoot for that, but create the business that's right for you. Yeah. And so many people don't think about their business in that way, right? So like, what if your business success for you looks like 100,000 a year, or even 50,000 a year, or whatever it is, which allows you to, work 4 hours a day and take the rest of the time off to do whatever, like that's success for you. If that is what you want, you don't have to create a bigger business just because somebody else is telling you that.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I did that because I thought that was something that I needed to do, because I was being told, or I was seeing that that's what success means. But and then I wanted a big team. I wanted an in-person office where people came in, and I had the in-person office and I hated it. And especially when my daughter was born, I was like, I want as much freedom and as possible, not only for myself, but for my team. Yeah. And so it's like a huge piece of advice is like, look, for everybody listening, don't chase somebody else's definition of success. Create what's right for you. And the other thing too, I call it the iceberg metaphor. You only see what's going on above the water. You don't see all the crap that's going on below the water. So you only see the Instagram feed of people's businesses. You don't see all the back end stuff that they're hating or struggling with. And I think that is a disservice to many people growing their business. And so create what's right for you.
Yeah. I love all that advice. I feel like I need to even re-listen to you say all that whenever this airs, because that was all so good. And I love thinking about, not chasing someone else's version of success, and not just chasing a number because it sounds like the cool thing to do.
Let's face it, top line revenue is not what it's about. It's about profit. It's about
Yep.
what goes in your pocket,
And
right?
even besides profit, what you pay yourself, like to go even further,
Yeah, exactly. How much are you actually like putting in the bank for yourself because this is your business? Like, what does that look like? Because somebody could have a $1 million in revenue business, but their profit margin is like 15%, which is still a lot of money, but there's a whole lot of complexity that if someone's running a $200,000 business with, a much, much higher profit margin and much like it's a very like way simpler business to run. Again, it's create the business that's right for you. And it's about profit and what's actually going into your pocket, like paying yourself than, the top line revenue number.
Yeah, it really is so interesting when you look at stuff like that because you could run a business that makes so much money, but then the take home's the same as someone who runs a say $100,000 a year business.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, I wanted to ask you too about your team. I've had the privilege of working with your team and being like in conversations with them and seeing how amazing they are. And I know that would be probably, you'd say, a huge piece of you being able to build your business to where it is. So I'm curious though, a few things. One, like, how did you deal with, and like, is this a struggle ever? It seems like it's not for you, but giving up control and delegating to team members. Do you have any? I feel like you do a really good job of that. So like watching you.
There's the iceberg metaphor in action right here.
Well, but I got to see you work with your team and felt that way that like it seems like you hire good people and then trust them. But I've also seen you go through like some team changes even. So I would love to hear you talk about like that aspect of the business.
Yeah, this is a constant learning for me because I've made all the mistakes in the book when it comes to hiring. I've done terrible job of hiring for a long time. And not only terrible job of actually hiring that person or a person, but also in onboarding them, meaning like giving them the right tools and coaching to be successful in their role. And like literally I had stuff happen last year where I look at it and I'm like, man, that was a waste of time and a waste of money and it didn't work out. And it's because of me. And I always take responsibility. Like I always look at like, all right, where could I have done? Where was the breakdown? Where did I not do as good a job? Yeah. And so basically what that's allowed me to do is learn like, okay, hire great people, invest in great people. And I mean, invest in, financially, but also invest your time and also invest in their success and not, yes, from a business perspective, but like get to know them on a personal basis. Like what's important to them. Perfect example right now is like Gretchen on my team, who's like my right-hand person. She's moving this weekend. She's moving to, another part of the state. And so that's on her mind. So like, she's got things to do on a work side, but like she's moving her entire family and it's one of the life events, right? It's like, how can I support her in that? Whether it's like being able to just talk through stuff. Can I hire a mover for her? Like, does she need food or, whatever, like that's a personal type of thing that's going on in her life. That's a big deal. How can I, as, the CEO of the company that she works for, help her in that? And I didn't do that for so long. I was just like, look, you have a job to do and let's do it. Whereas we have to remember that they're people, right? And the more that we can invest in our team, financially again, but also in them personally to help them succeed, they will help you succeed way more. And, I've gone through contractors and employees and difference and like trying to work that out, like part-time, full-time, obviously. And like, what does that look like? And again, as I mentioned before, I wanted a big team for a long time. When my daughter was born, all that changed. I want a small team, virtual. They can work from wherever, but they're really, really good at what they do. I can't teach somebody integrity, for example, but I can teach them how to do all like the business stuff. Yeah. So I look for, do they have the intangibles? Do they align with our values first and foremost? And then I can teach them the other things. And that was one of the things that has shifted for me over the years, was like, I always wanted to hire somebody like who knew what I wanted, whatever I wanted done.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly there've been times to do that and where it's right to do that. But at the same time, again, you have to look at like, what can't you teach somebody? I can't teach somebody to, work ethic, for example, or I can't teach somebody, how to cooperate or whatever, just throwing things out. Like that is really, really key. And so for anybody who's like building your team, already has a team and wants to like add more people or what have you, first of all, again, you always hear that you got to have a big team in order to grow and scale. That is absolutely not the case. I'm a perfect example of that. I know plenty of other people who have very small teams. Like you're a perfect example. You have an amazing business and you have a small team. And so it's looking at, okay, as the CEO, what do I need to get off of my plate so that I can be spending my time in my, you heard zone of genius a lot, like podcasting for you. Like no one else is going to do your podcast, Elizabeth. Like, so, okay, like, are there things that are going on in your business that might be keeping you from that? It's like, okay, what can I get off my plate? Or do I need to get off my plate so that I'm focusing on, you just finished your program, right? Like no one else is going to be creating your program. You're doing that. And that's a revenue producing asset in your business. So like, what do I need to get off my plate? And start doing it strategically, like systematically. Okay, what are the things I need to get off my plate immediately? And then work towards, freeing up your time as much as possible so that you're spending your time on those things and giving yourself time to do whatever it is that you want to do. And it's a progress. Like I'm always learning. And I've learned a lot of hard lessons over the years, but yeah, I try and hire really, really good people and who are going to put, customers first, again, great values. And it's not one thing and I'll stop talking. I'm going off on a tangent here.
No, that's great.
Like one of the challenges I've had is like, I'm the type of person is like, wait, you just started on Monday. Why haven't you produced a result? And it's Thursday. Yeah. Like I want, like, come on, let's go. And so I've had to like, you talk about patience and giving control over to somebody. When you bring somebody on your team, you have to invest in them. You have to invest your time, or you might have someone on your team who is doing that for you even better. But like, it's an investment of your time. Again, mindset, you have to understand that you have to slow down in order to speed up. You're going to take a short-term hit, if you will, of I'm paying this person, but I'm not going to see any kind of ROI or results from this person for probably 90 days. And so we have to be patient for that. And I think lastly, the other big shift I've made in what you mentioned just a couple minutes ago was the quicker that we can get out of like task giving and more to ownership of like, okay, you know what? You're responsible for, making sure that all of our members have everything that they need from an administrative thing, or that they're all up on the calendar and when things are happening. So rather than like saying, okay, it's Monday, do this. It's like you give them the ownership and the result that they're responsible for. And then they figure out how to do it within the confines, for lack of a better way to say it, of the values of the business. Yeah. So they know like, oh, I'm not going to do this because this is out of integrity. Okay, cool. But it's less about task giving and trusting and giving that ownership to people and letting them be responsible for the result that they're responsible for.
Yeah. And with that, it's like, if you are just giving tasks to everyone, it's still completely on you, like to follow it through, see it through, to catch any errors. And when you give someone else responsibility, it's like, then it's on them to figure it out more.
Yep.
Yeah. I love all those tips. And with like because you do have a virtual team, like you said, and you were talking about investing like in Gretchen and caring for her as she's moving. Like, what are some ways you get to know a virtual team though? Like, do you have any tips that things y'all do to like actually be relational versus just like what you were saying of how it can be easy to be like, okay, cool. Like it's team meeting, time to work. Like, are there any things you do to kind of get to know people better?
So I think it's outside of the scope of like your weekly meeting, for example, even though we start off every meeting that we do with like wins, for example, like, all right, what was the win from the weekend? What, how did it go? whatever, like, what was your weekend like, your family or whatever it is like,
Yeah.
but it's outside of that is really like literally being intentional about scheduling time with somebody and just sitting down and chatting with them. Like you can ask questions like, what's important? Like, what are your goals in your personal life? What's important to you? What would you love to do? Right. So like Gretchen, for example, like wanted to take her family to Disney World. And so it's an expensive ordeal for like tickets cost a lot. Right. And so I was able to help do that to allow for that. Like, and so that is huge because she gets to accomplish something that is important for her and her family. Now, I'm not going to know that if I don't ask her flat out. Like, what are the things that you're working towards? So, like, and we often assume that what motivates people is money, when for most people it is, sure. But we have to understand too that some people might be motivated by public praise, like letting people know in a team meeting, for example, hey, this person did an amazing job. Thank you so much. And like praising them in front of other people. Maybe that's their love language, if you will. There's literally you have the 5 love languages for relationships, but you can take an assessment for businesses. I think it's called it's like the workplace appreciation assessment or whatever it's called. Yeah. And it's like the love languages, if you will, within business. Right. And so other people might like experiences. Maybe like you want to reward somebody with like a spa day or, a fishing trip, whatever it is, whatever, like people don't assume that money is the motivating factor.
Yeah.
So find out, have the conversations with them. Like what's important to them? What are their goals? What are they, what's most important to them? And then also, you can do virtual happy hours, for example, like schedule it, whatever, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever it is. And just like hang out. There's plenty. You can literally Google like virtual happy hour games. You can play games and just have fun. Yeah. It's just a different, especially when you have a virtual team, doing whatever you can to create that culture within the business virtually. And then lastly on that, try at least once a year to try to get together in person, because that changes the whole dynamic too, when you can get together in person.
Yeah, I want to make that happen, but personally which last year contributed to some of that not making sense. But yeah, those are all great tips. Oh my gosh, I feel like I could ask you a million questions.
I'm an open book.
I know. I feel like we probably need to start wrapping up though, but I have a few like last questions for you, some like rapid fire-esque ones. One thing I wanted to ask you about that we've touched on it because I know your daughter's so important to your life that you just keep mentioning her, but I want to know, how did having a baby, and now she's 2.5, but how did that impact the way you run your business, the way you do your schedule, the way you even think about your business? Like what changed, if anything did?
Everything changed, actually. Like literally everything changed with it. Like how I thought about the business changed from the perspective of like kind of what I've been talking about, in that before I could work whenever I wanted. I could still do that, but like hours didn't matter. Like in-person office, I used to want big team, complexity, all this other stuff. When she came along, I want simplicity. And that's what I teach and everything I do is like, how do we accomplish this simplistically? I teach students like, and I heard this from Tim Ferriss years ago. It's like, what would this look like if it were easy and trying to solve a problem? So I'm always asking myself, and when she was born, it was the same question. All right, I want to spend as much time as possible with her. How do I because this is all about, and again, what I teach is we're creating a business around our life, not the other way around. The business, first and foremost, the business is funding, if you will, your lifestyle. Yeah. That's number one. And so, when she came along, I was like, all right, I'm a very routine oriented person. I had a very early morning routine. Like I did this, and this, and like that went out the window. And so that lack of structure really threw me for a loop. So I had to really adapt to that. It really made me rethink like systems and processes in the business. And really the why of the business is number one. My biggest why is, and again, this comes down to mindset, and I could tell a whole story, but I'll just keep it short. I grew up in small town, New Hampshire. My dad was an auto mechanic. My mom was a children's librarian. So we were very blue collar. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is hard to make. Rich people are bad. Ooh, look at that person driving that over there, whatever it was. And so I want to be the example for number one, my daughter, to show her that you have to be working 16 hours a day in order to be successful. And that really changed the why of my business, to show her that, but also be able to help other entrepreneurs share that with their family and be the example of that for their family. So yeah, everything changed. She'll come walking in here in my office, and I'm on Zoom here, and she just she's walking in, that's cool. I tell her, I never say that I'm going to go work. I say I'm going to go run the business, because we're trying to just open her up to, new. I mean, she's 2.5, but trying to open up to new things and how things are possible.
Yeah, I've heard it said too of with kids, you don't want to say mommy or daddy has to go. I have to go work because we got to make money, but not as much of a have to, but hey, I'm getting to go do this. This is something that actually lights me up. Here's what it is. I know she is, like you said, too young for that still, but I love that you're already thinking like that about the way you talk about things. Yeah. Okay. Another question. Okay. And this could be spiritual, mental health, physical health. What are some ways you feel you take care of your health as a business owner though? Yeah. That's really random.
No. And it's that right there is probably the most important question. It's because I didn't do a very good job of it for a long time. And again, those first 4 years, that suffered immensely. So yeah, if we don't have our health, we can't do any of what we're doing. We can't show up how we want to show up. We can't show up for our family. We can't show up for ourselves. We can't show up for our students, our audience, what have you. So yeah, it's really, I love to read. And so, business, I always have a couple of different books going. So yeah, business books, but I'm not surprisingly all about mindset books. I'm always reading something to broaden that aspect. So that's a main focus. I do meditation every single day. When Maya was born, I really get out of my workout routine. And to be completely honest, that's been really hard to get back into for some reason, which I'm trying to figure out why even now. But making sure, again, structure equals freedom. Yeah. That's on the calendar. That becomes non-negotiable. All right, that's my exercise time, whatever that might look like. And so you have to prioritize that. And not only that, and this is something I've struggled with hugely because I love what I do and I love to work. It really became my hobby. And it wasn't until, frankly, in this year that I'm all right, you know what? I need to, because when we have a hobby that is completely outside of your business and what you do on a daily basis. Now, granted, my hobby sounds kind of weird, but my daughter is my priority, going for walks and playground and all that stuff with her. Yeah. But I've decided I want to learn the guitar. I literally right here in my office it's still in the box, the Amazon box. Fun. I have a guitar that I want to teach myself. And so I just want to get away from, because my brain's always going, I want to get away from that for even a short time every single day. Yeah. But what most people don't realize, and it's been a long time for me to realize it too, is that that's when we get the best ideas, right? We always talk about I thought it's in the shower or what have you, or I thought about this on a run or whatever it is. It's because your brain is away from thinking about what you're trying to solve. And you're in for example, in the business, and you're just kind of you're not thinking about it. You're sort of clearing the space. That's when the ideas come in. But we have to give ourselves the opportunity to be able to create that space and freedom not only in our time, but also in our head. So
yeah, I love that of getting the guitar hobby. That's really fun. With meditation, I'm curious, do you have an app you're using, or are you just what does that look like?
So yeah, I've used Calm for a long time. A lot of people use like what's it, Headspace or whatever. I can't get over the guy's voice. I feel like it's the gecko from the Geico commercials. Like I know a lot of people use it, love it. I just use Calm and I just do the daily 10-minute. And so meditation is really like, I mean, again, I talk about like beating myself up earlier. Like I feel like if I get out of meditation, I'm like, I got nothing out of that. I'm like, Rick, you weren't doing it right. Are you doing something wrong with that? And so I basically just kind of like, I like to sit down and try and just center myself and just focus on my breathing, as basic as, you know, and everyone's heard that. That's really what I try to do. 10 minutes. I'm trying to do it more also in like the middle of the day as a break, just to kind of like chill out for a minute. But yeah, I use Calm in the morning. Sometimes I'll just kind of like this morning, I just kind of sat for a few minutes. I also got up kind of late, but sit for a few minutes, just kind of center myself. Yeah.
I love that. I love getting to hear the details of what
Do you
it's
meditate?
like. I do. I use the Simple Habit app. You know, I used to teach yoga, so I used to like write meditations, which feels like
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I taught yoga for, well, only for like 3 years, but I'm still a certified yoga teacher. Hilariously, though, I wrote myself, which is it's really funny. I will never let anyone listen to it, but birth affirmations. I wrote some and I recorded it.
Are you going to listen?
I'm going to listen to it during labor, but
Amazing.
I've also been already listening to it. But it's just funny because like there's so many I've like listened to already that other people have put out there. I'm like, yes, I like this, but then I kind of wanted to combine it all. But it's just funny because it's literally my own voice doing it. I'm serious. It's like the most embarrassing thing ever. That's why I'm like, my husband's not going to get to listen to it. I'm like, this is only for me. But yeah, I love stuff like that. That's why I was curious, like what your time looks like there.
I try and do yoga too, because as I get older, I'm like, I want to stay flexible as much as possible. And I'm not advanced at all. For example, like I'm super, super basic, but whenever I do it, I'm trying to be more consistent with it now, but I'll literally like up in our bedroom, like I'll roll out, Amy has a mat. I'll roll it out. I'll put Yoga with Adrian on YouTube. I'll pick a video. I'll just do it. And again, 10, 15 minutes tops. And man, after that, I feel so good. I feel awesome.
What's good is stay flexible by doing that too. So that's smart. My husband's saying he wants to start doing yoga because he feels like he's like lost flexibility through other types of exercise. But okay. Rick, this has been awesome. I feel like I need to ask you the question that's like the one question I told you I might ask you. But you were like, I don't know what I'm going to say to that. But most impactful business book you've read over the years, and we can like close with that, which is honestly like would be like the most boring thing we talked about, because I feel like everything I've loved getting to hear like the inside of like the way you think about stuff, but I also want you to answer that question.
So guys, just real quick. So before we hit record, Elizabeth asked me, so did you see the questions that I sent over to ask you? And I was like, I actually don't like to see questions that people are going to ask, because it's like, I just want to feel like we're sitting down for coffee. And so I said, unless you're going to ask me like what my favorite book is, because I always have to, I always get stumped on that because I just have so many. And she's like, well, I'm actually going to ask you that. So I would say, this is such a lame answer because everyone says it, but it really truly is been like a game changer. I'm going to say 2 books on the business side, and that's Essentialism and Traction. Yeah. Everyone says they're super common books. Everyone says them, but they really are like, they've been super instrumental. Essentialism around, we're talking about today, like getting the right things done and only focusing on the things that you want to focus on. And then Traction is kind of like your operations Bible for your business. Can I say one more book? It's not a business book at all. It's called, and for people, like, don't be scared off by the title. If you tend to get scared off by this from a religion standpoint, but it's called Conversations with God. And it's Neil, I don't remember who it is. I'm looking at it's Conversations with God. And it's like, it's about this guy who is literally having a conversation, he thinks, with God, and he is writing down what he's hearing from God. And so it's like, and it's written, and it's kind of hard to get into. I literally tried 4 times to get into it and I couldn't do it. But then I got past, I remember page like 60. And then I was like, oh my God, this is so good.
Yeah.
And so it's written in such a way where you get to read, it's written like regular font in the author's words, and then it's like italicized in what he's writing down or what he's hearing from God. And it's just all about like all the mindsets that we're talking about today. Like, oh, the book is so good. Yeah. So I'd say those 3 books have been huge in my journey.
I love those recommendations. I'll have to check those out. I've read Traction, but I haven't read the other 2. And I agree with you on Traction that it is like a staple. And if you read it too early in your business, it is less effective. The first time I picked it up, I was like, what even is this? This is so horrible and boring. And then a couple of years later, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need now.
Yeah.
So yeah, just make sure. Yeah. It's not like if you need to be ready to like scale with a team and some things like that for it to make sense. But yeah. Okay, Rick, tell everyone where they can connect with you.
Thank you for that. The Art of Online Business is the podcast. I'm on all the major podcasting platforms. It's probably the best place. Come to my website and see Elizabeth's brilliant work at rickmulready.com. And then I'm on Instagram. I'm at Rick Mulready.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah. And I'll link to the episodes we did together on your podcast because those were really fun. But yeah, everyone should check out your podcast because I seriously love it and listen to it all the time. And
thank you.
It's awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast today and for staying until the end. I appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed this episode, then I want to invite you to check out my online course and coaching program for designers, Booked Out Designer. In this program, I teach you how to build a successful in-demand booked out business as a designer. You'll learn everything from the exact experience I take my clients through to things like figuring out your niche, mastering discovery calls, pricing your services for profit, creating contracts that will not cause you legal troubles, and my exact social media strategies to book clients. You even get to watch recordings of me in actual meetings with my actual clients so you can really learn through what you're seeing. We take things you're learning on this podcast and so many topics I never even cover on this show and deep dive into them. So in addition to the amazing course, the course is 9 modules of teaching with over 90 lessons. You get group coaching calls with me and access to an exclusive Facebook community of designers just like you. And fun fact, this isn't one of those kind of Facebook groups where the founder never comments on posts or you never see them in there. You'll find me there all the time, ready to help you out with any business question you have. So to get info on the course and to see when the doors will be opening again, head to elizabethmccravey.com/BOD, short for Booked Out Designer. I hope to be able to coach you and teach you inside of the course soon. And don't forget that you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And a great way to support the show is to leave a rating and review, share it with a friend, share it on social media. All of that will help get the word out. All right, I'll see you again next week.